So we're going to roll the calf muscle. You place the foam roller on the ground, and you can either place one calf on top. So the principle is that you're using your own body weight to act as a pressure downwards onto the foam roller, and as you move or press into the foam roller, the pressure will cause the areas of muscle that are knotted to elicit soreness, discomfort, pain. But if you hold long enough on these spots or roll through them enough, they slowly dissipate. So what begins as very, very painful spots, areas, slowly over time melt away. And as they melt away, that usually coincides with the muscle loosening and relaxing underneath. And that's the whole aim of the foam rolling. You're trying to find the knots in the muscle, and you're trying to use the pressure to knead out the knots. So I'm using one leg here, so this is just the weight of one leg. I'm lifting my bottom slightly, putting weight through my hands, my arms. I'm lifting my bottom slightly, and I'm just rolling through the calf up towards the knee, and then I can roll down through the Achilles tendon, and I can roll with my foot pointing upwards like the 12 o'clock position, or I can start to rotate my foot to the side, maybe to the 11 o'clock position or the 10 o'clock position, or even the 9 o'clock position. Now sometimes to get the 9 o'clock position, to get right on the side, sometimes we have to adapt the position. So no longer can we have two hands down and be our buttocks straight down on the ground. We may have to roll and lift our body weight so that we're rolling through the calf. But it doesn't matter how you're doing this, as long as the principle is followed, that you're rolling through the muscle. Now there's two ways to roll and loosen the knots in any muscle when you're using a foam roller. There's two methods that I use. One is I find the epicenter, or the center, or the top of the mountain of the tender, or what's called trigger point area. So I find the epicenter, the very center where it's at its most painful, and instead of avoiding it and coming away, I hold on that painful spot, and I use a breathing technique to just, as I exhale, relax out, and as I relax out, I allow the body weight to just relax. Rather than tense the muscle up against it because it's painful, I allow the pain to happen. I allow my body to relax and to relax into the discomfort. And you usually find over between 20 and 60 seconds, something like that, what becomes very, very painful, acutely painful to begin with, slowly starts to fade away. Such time that the discomfort has gone, or you're left with a little bit of discomfort, but the majority, certainly the really intense pain, has disappeared. And when you get to the point where the pain has dropped down to a low level, or completely gone, then that's giving you an indication that that trigger point has been released to the best you're going to get at that point, and then you can then move on to another area. So I'm just going to show an example of that now, because my calves, I've been doing a lot of running today, and my calves are very, very tender. So I'm going to roll through. I'm going to use two legs because, and I'm going to show you, this is a kind of progression, so that now I'm using the weight of two legs combined pressure down through the foam roller. And this usually is a bit more uncomfortable, but usually releases muscles better. So I'm going to roll through and find a trigger point, and I believe I'm on one about now. So rather than moving off it, I'm just going to hold on the epicenter right on the top of it. And as I exhale, I'm just going to allow the discomfort to happen, to accept the discomfort, knowing that usually over 20 to 40 seconds, and I'm starting to feel that that is now starting to reduce down. It's not completely gone, but the initial very intense pain is starting to fade. And that now is usually an indicator that that's probably about enough there. That's released. Yes, that's much, much better. And now I'm going to move. And usually if your calves are quite tender like mine are, you don't have to move much. You can just move a few millimeters or a half an inch and you're onto another area of trigger point, which is another way of saying another tender area that usually is indicating knotted or tight muscle underneath. So I'm on another trigger point now. I'm right on the center of it. And again, I'm just going to breathe. And that's starting to fade down now rapidly. And that's dropping right off. It's almost like I'm getting used to it, or it's becoming more comfortable. And I'm going to show one more of this technique, and I'm going to do the side of my calf. So to do the side, I'm going to turn on my side so that that side is in contact with the foam roller. And then going to adjust my body, and everyone has a different position. It doesn't really matter as long as there's pressure downwards through the foam roller. It doesn't matter what position you adapt. It's what works for you. So I'm going to work into this position here. I'm going to bring the foot in front of me and I'm going to roll, and I'm going to find a trigger point, and there's one there. So again, I'm just breathing, I'm allowing that pain to happen, and trigger points are really acutely painful sometimes, and that's normal. The pain I have at the moment is quite acute, and it's almost referring pain down from my calf, the side of my shin calf, down into my ankle and the outside of my foot as I speak, into my little toe. So that's not unusual. Again, I'm just allowing the pain to come. I'm not tightening up or resisting it. I'm using my body weight to drop into that and press on that continuous pressure on that area. And that's starting to fade down. Now that's taking a little longer than some of the others, and that's normal. As a general rule, typically a trigger point will ease between 20 and 60 seconds in my experience. And that's starting to fade now. But it's one of those that is fading slowly. So I think I will get more benefit to stay around here. If your arm starts to get tired, you can just drop down. And then when you've had a little rest, taken some weight off your arm, you can move it around. So that's the first technique that I use. The second technique to release a trigger point, I usually find the trigger point and then roll above and below that area. So I roll through the painful trigger point area, and that in a rhythmical way, and that repeated rolling through also is a way of taking the discomfort and the muscle spasm out of that area. So I'm just going to give an example of that now. I'm going to find a trigger point. I don't have to go far. There's one. And I'm going to come through it. And I'm going to go back through it. So I'm rhythmically going to go through the trigger point And what I'm doing is I'm just lifting my bottom slightly, taking pressure through my arms and just rolling my heels away so that the foam roller goes up my calf through the trigger point, and then I roll my heels back so that the foam roller rolls towards my heel direction through the trigger point, and I repeat that process. And typically you may have to roll through an area 10 times, 20 times, 30 times. It depends on how chronic and how painful and knotted the area is. So that's the second technique I tend to use.